the Kirkwood Meadows Public Utility District to order, and we'll start with the roll call.
All right, so everybody's ready. Epstein,
Present.
Mediteranda, here. Schroeder,
Here.
Duker,
Present on Zoom.
and Dornbrook here.
Okay, and announcements, Eric.
I'd just like to welcome everyone to the regularly scheduled meeting, and if you're on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function to speak.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar? I'm not hearing any. Okay, next we'll move for comments from the audience, a chance for members of the audience to address the board on any non-agenda topics. And
Stench has his hand up.
I see Standish's hand up, and I see Rick and Sandy. Standish, do you have a preferred?
Yeah,
Rick?
Hold on, Stench, if you would unmute, you should be able to speak.
I just didn't, did Rick have an order? Did you have an order in mind?
it's probably the same comment and
Yeah,
I
okay.
can just start or we have Spanish or
All
what we'd
right,
like.
so Standish. Standish, floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Standish.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Good. Well, I'll try to be brief. But I heard some folks like be talking about again today. I thought it'd be appropriate and had breast cancer for 25 and a half years.
Standish, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. You're breaking up. Is there any options for a better internet? I see you already have your camera off. If not, we'll try hard.
He's gonna reconnect, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
So Rick.
I think I should wait for Spanish actually.
Yeah. Okay, we're waiting for Standish to reconnect. Hopefully he has a better connection. And then we'll proceed.
You want to just skip to 6 until he reconnects, Bob? Which is nothing on it.
Sure.
Move through until.
All right, so item 6, there are no written comments from the public. Let me see, since there's no objections to consent calendar, I have a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Okay, Doug moves, second.
Dornbrook, I'll second
Rick
that.
seconds. Okay, roll call, please.
Epstein,
Approved.
Mediteranda, yep. Dornbrook, aye. Schroeder,
Aye.
Duker,
Aye.
it's unanimous.
Okay,
Looks like Standish is back.
all right.
You'll unmute. Standish, you should be able to go. There we go.
Hi, folks. I'm sorry about the internet connectivity, but
That's
Well,
much
I was-
better now.
yeah, what I tried to say is I heard people were talking about Anne possibly, and so I thought I'd dial in and kind of tell you what happened, which is that at a very high level, she had breast cancer for 25 and a half years, and we simply ran out of medicine or treatments, effective treatments for them. And so, a little more color is that we bought our home in Kirkwood in May of '96, so 28 years ago, and 2.5 years later, Anne was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer, which nobody ever dies of, but everybody freaks out about. And we freaked out and treated it as aggressively as we could because we didn't want to, quote, have to chase metastatic breast cancer, which is exactly what we ended up doing. And so 10 years later, we were told that Anne was cured, and they shipped her file off-site, told her she didn't need to go back to the doctors. And 2 years later, it recurred, meaning she had trouble, actually got in a ski accident. They did an MRI and found metastatic breast cancer in her femur. And so, we then had, frankly, 11 years of great drugs, 6 years where they were approved drugs, and they were great drugs. One is an aromatase inhibitor. When you go, what the hell is that? And aromatase is an enzyme that makes estrogen, and if you can cut that off, then you stop the food for hormone receptor positive breast cancers. And then Anne went on a clinical trial at UCSF, and she was the longest lasting person in North America on it. She lasted 5 years. And in the sort of announcement of Anne's death that I'll send around, including to most of you this week, there will be at least one video on that drug. There may be two. Dr. Phil is where it started. And so that lasted till basically March or April of 2021. And for the last 3 years, she's been treated by older and older drugs, mainly chemotherapy. And the problem with the older drugs is they aren't as effective and they don't last as long. And so the end really started, I'd say December 20th, when I returned from a meeting, and Anne had just spent an hour on the phone with her nurse practitioner. And nurse practitioners, I don't know how much you know about them in the cancer setting, but they don't have an hour to spend on anything. And the nurse practitioner was basically saying, we're running out of drugs, and how long do you want to fight this? And Anne said, I want to fight it forever. And so there were, 3 drugs that were tried in the first quarter, 2 approved for breast cancer, and then that was it. So her oncologist prescribed one that was not approved for breast cancer, but used for it on an exception basis. And based on what happened, I would agree that it should not be approved. And so Anne basically went in for scans March 28th, routine scans. We had our regular oncology meeting on April 2nd. And the oncologist, who's world class, basically walked us through how the cancer had metastasized to the liver. Prior to that, breast cancer metastasized to 4 places. 1 is the bones, 2 is the liver, 3 is the lung, 4 is the brain. We don't do brain scans, but do regular scans of the other 3 organs. And Anne's cancer had been in her bones for 15 years, a little in the liver, but manageable, and less in the lungs, which was very manageable. But on April 2nd, the scan showed that it was, pervasive through the liver. So 3 weeks later, we went in for another oncology visit. This is April 23rd. And, I'd had increasing trouble getting Anne up and down stairs and having her walk and all that. But she hadn't been in any pain and had been enjoying everything. That morning, she was in a lot of pain. And, we basically, with her oncologist and her, obviously, decided to pursue comfort care as opposed to more aggressive ways of saving her. And the comfort care we chose was UCSF Parnassus, which is, another campus. Basically, we were being treated at Mission Bay, and they hooked her up to the pain management things. And within, 24 hours, we were all there. At 6:30 in the morning, she stopped breathing, and that was it. So I guess I would say to all of you at a high level, 1, cancer, if you get it, 25 years is a hell of a run. 2, I've been around the country several times to all the breast cancer centers, and UCSF is the best, and it's, in my view, a national treasure. And then the last thing I'll say is, if you go through this and, you have less than 24 hours of pain, that's another win. So I'll stop there, and I'm sorry for all the emotion.
Anish, thank you so much for sharing the background. I'm sure that's not easy, but I find it comforting to just know how well she did for how long. So thank you very much for that. We turn it over now to Rick.
Yeah, Stanish, we just want to again express our sympathy towards you, your family, and just remember Anne as a person who was just a light in the community, and certainly instrumental in our Kirkwood Summer Festival, and just with her invaluable contributions and all that she did for the fire department to find us funding, as well as the work that she did with the Kirkwood Community Playground, her grace, her candidness, her smile, and of course, seeing her telling Chewy to be quiet on Zoom meetings will be truly missed. So, but again, we just our deepest sympathy to you and your family. And I know that there are others who are on the line now, I think would like to also say something as well.
It's Standish, really so sorry to hear the news. Happy to hear that you managed it with a lot of courage and avoided pain, like you mentioned, and I'll be sorely missed. And you guys are both gems in the neighborhood.
Standish, it's Chris Tucker. Just to say, you and Ann have been friends since that first Lamaze class and the Big Slurpee. And you have been pillars of Kirkwood. And I, for one, I think many hope that you personally and your family will remain close to Kirkwood and frequent visitors to that lovely house. And you've done so much for PUD and for the whole community, both of you. So sympathies.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
I think Cheryl Stern.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Anne made the world better. The Kirkwood community is better thanks to Anne's generous spirit. The playground was reimagined and improved for young families and their children. The volunteer fire department acquired equipment needed to keep the community safe and to keep the firefighters safe. Anne brought out the best in those of us who had the opportunity to get to know and learn from her. We cherish our memories of Anne. Her grace, courage, and strength will live in our hearts forever. And deepest sympathy to Standish and the family. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about my dear friend Anne.
Cheryl, thank you for those words. Sandy Goldberg.
Hi, everybody. It's Sandy Goldberg. It's really hard to know where to start, but Kirkwood is where my friendship with Anne and their family started. We met in 1995 or 96. We were building our cabin and they were buying their log house on East Meadows Drive. And we became fast friends. Our boys were the same age. And it was the playground where we spent many hours watching them play and talking and getting to know each other. And she really became like a sister to me and a great friend. And while we all remember her for KVFD, she actually was involved in the Kirkwood Ski and Education Foundation first because our kids were on the team, and she and Standish were great supporters, and Anne helped fundraise. And I don't know how many of those booklets that she bought so that you could get discount Kirkwood tickets or give them to your friends, but they were always so supportive of the ski program. And then the kids grew up and left skiing, or at least the program, and the summer festival, or actually it was the summer KVFD barbecue at that time. One year, I remember Anne and I brainstorming about how can we make more money for this thing? It's really fun, and Anne had been involved in so many fundraisers in the city with schools, and me too. And so we got together with Cheryl, and Anne suggested, let's do a silent auction. We could hold it on the patio with events and we'll solicit for items. And 2013, according to my records, is when the first one was born, thanks to Anne and her vision. But each year she would chair it and be in charge of getting all the items and pushing all of us to help and get items. And it just got better and better every year. And because of her leadership, it made more and more money. And then came along her idea to do the letter writing campaign, which basically underwrote the whole event by tens of thousands of dollars. So, and besides that, of course, you mentioned the playground, Cheryl. She was instrumental in making that happen too. So she was definitely a light in our community, a great friend to many, always committed to whatever cause she set her mind to. what I loved too about her is she was so great at making decisions. She always followed her gut, and her vision was incredible. She was, as I said, a strong leader and an incredible, special person that will be missed forever.
Thank you, Sandy. I believe
Yes, I just want to express my sorrow and my sympathies, Standish, to you and your kids, and to all of you who have been her great friends, and to the Kirkwood community. I'm so glad I got to know Anne, and it, it was, the COVID KVFD debacle, trying to pivot so much, and when I really got to know Anne, and I was so impressed with how, between Chewy barking, how she just like knew everything, just knew exactly what to do, and when to do it, and had so much experience. And little did I know that that was just only part of her shine. She was also so warm. I remember her inviting Todd and me, who she didn't know very well, over Standish to your all's house, and we sat 12 feet apart and in camp chairs, and she had like separate nuts and separate hand wipes for us. She'd thought of everything. And then just one day at Silver Lake, to see her and you, Standish, come bombing at kayaking with huge grins on your face, I'm like, my God, this woman, she can do everything. She's like super smart. She's super kind. She's so warm. And then she had her garden. We live near the O'Grady house in San Francisco, and she invited me to come over and get some tomato plants. And it's like a farm there in the front yard of a beautiful San Francisco house. And so when I was cultivating the tomatoes, Anne was like my green guardian angel, just trying to help me figure out how to make them grow in Kirkwood. And then when the tomatoes started disappearing, she was like, what, how could they be, it was like some creature was stealing all the tomatoes. It turned out it was our black lab who was doing it. But Anne and I had just a great laugh about it. She was just, you could giggle with her, you could try to change the world with her, you could ask questions and advice of her. I mean, she could and did do everything. And what a light, what a gift. I'm so sorry that she's not here.
Thank you, Anne. Next is a phone number. I can't read it.
650 area code.
Bob,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Sandy Sloan and Eric Rickard. Thank you for honoring Anne at this meeting. I just want to say I agree that I think Anne represented all that is special about Kirkwood. She was brave and adventurous, but also very kind and generous. She cared about Kirkwood being a community and was creative and diligent in making it so. Everyone's already mentioned how she was instrumental in so many things. I want to also say encouraging the formation of the 501c3, which started all the money coming into the fire department, and also spearheading changing the auction to not just in person, but online, which of course raised even more money. She gave generously of her ideas, her energy, her time. We will miss her greatly. Thinking of you, Standish, and I hope the PUD will carry on her spirit of community.
And I just want to add my thanks to the O'Grady couple, which I think will always exist. Thank you, Standish. We'll remember Anne always. Thank you.
Okay, Sandy and Eric, thank you. I believe Beth.
I never knew anyone as dedicated as Anne. She was a leader and, as Standish said, a fighter. And, we were fortunate because she put all of that energy into raising money for the benefit of the entire community. I mean, the one day, Standish, you were there when we were in the fire bay putting all the auction things together, and Anne could barely stand up because of the cancer in her back. And she was still there in pain. Yeah, that's how dedicated she was to making sure that that auction went off well. Can only say I feel very fortunate and honored that I got to work side by side with her, and I had her as my friend for a short time. She will be missed by the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Standish, I just want to say that you have friends here and we appreciate all that you've done and we'll remember Anne forever. And thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to express our thoughts to you.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we'll go back to the mundane. Who wants to talk about the draft capital budget? I do.
Oh, Bob. Yeah.
All right, so we'll start in with item 9A, draft capital budget. And Eric, do you have any things you want to comment on changes from last time or?
Yeah, so
Okay, start with that.
probably the biggest change is as we started going through the operational budget, I was better able to look at the timing of capital projects. So some timing of projects has been moved to coincide with available revenue, reserves, and cash flow. So you'll see some things moved out, and I can highlight those as we go through. But are there any questions, or do you want to?
Let's see if anyone has any specific questions.
Are we on page 26?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It should be on your screen, Chris.
Sorry. Mhm.
Are there any questions about the capital budget draft? Okay.
Okay.
Not hearing any. Then I think we're ready to move on to the draft operating budget. And let me just make a couple of comments on it before we get started that because of all the scheduling changes, some of them caused by me personally, it hasn't been a regular structure to be able to have the benefit of the finance committee review things. And that's particularly true of this draft operating budget. So we did the best of whatever data was available, but it also is the fact that it doesn't represent year-to-date numbers very well. So it's early, but it's a starting point. And so with that, let me turn it over to
Sure.
Eric.
And just to dovetail into that is basically we're working with 8 months of data and 4 months of estimated data using last year's budgets for March, April, May, and June. So a third of the year is estimated on projected year and actual. So keep that in the back of your mind. And a couple of things I want to highlight on fire. You'll notice that it gets significantly more perilous in 28 and 29. Why did the stipend donation drop off? Because if we keep donating 55,000 a year, the 501c3 will be out of money by that point. So that'll be something for the 501c3 board to consider, but as well as this board to consider how to backfill that loss of funding. So any questions on fire?
Okay, we'll do this department by department. So any further questions on the draft for fire?
I mean, just to say that differently, the way that we increased stipends, the budget, the money that is currently in the 501c3, or at least anticipated, would run out in 2020.
Yeah, if the 501c3 continues to fund basically the increased stipend, they would run out of money and they would not be able to fund it in 2028.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah. So we have a couple of years left of that, of the current status quo available.
That's up to the 501c3 board.
If 501c accepts it, annually, they continue to do that. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure there's a lot of questions on Parks and Recs, so we'll pause there. Okay, not hearing any.
Zoom in for this one a
Okay,
little bit.
so electric fund.
Just because it's a bigger one. There is some anomaly in depreciation and amortization that was pointed out by John. We're looking into the formulas on that to figure out why that. I don't imagine that much depreciable assets dropped off, so I need to figure out what happened in the formula. So we'll be looking into that to figure that one out. But other than that, I really didn't have a whole lot on electric.
Are there any questions on electric?
Just in terms of our budgeted cost per kilowatt hour and some of the things that we had done to, like, I want to make sure that we're budgeting according to now that we're hedging and a bit more. Is that all incorporated?
Yes, so if you look at the rate per kilowatt hour budgeted, it's 24 cents through fiscal year 26, which is when our contract with Shell for hedging ends, June 30th of 26. So that is in there. That's when that ends. And so then I just assumed a CPI increase for the following years as best guess I could.
Okay.
Same with the budgeted cost per kilowatt hour, but note that there will be a rate study that will be occurring in fiscal year 25, 26, which will change all the numbers from 27 into the future. So,
okay. So make sure.
but yes, that is in there. Budget at 0.9 cents a kilowatt hour and the rate of 0.24 cents. So that is consistent with the hedging.
Thank you.
Eric, I think I was about to ask about the 9 cents because that had been in our assumptions list a month or two ago. 9 cents is the purchase power price based on hedge, if I understood that correctly.
Correct.
Could you say one more time, how does the 9 cents relate to the 24 cents?
So the 9 cents is the component of the purchase power, and then the rate per kilowatt hour has a portion of fixed assets in it as well, along with labor.
Okay, so 24 is the price, is the retail price, and 9 cents is the cost, the wholesale price.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on electric?
Yes, so my understanding is that the California State Legislature just passed a rate
For IOUs, for investor-owned
Doesn't
utilities.
affect us at all.
so it won't have any
does not
effect
affect
on
us
our
in any way.
structuring. Okay, that's so just wanted
No,
clarification.
you could just
on
say
that.
our leadership is being followed by the rest of the state.
It's good to know.
And we all have the same advisor, so.
And one thing I will point out, just because it's coming soon, June 30th, 25, Brandy, we go on to WAPA.
January 1st.
January 1st of 25. So there will be an oddity in here. They are only going to backfill about 14% of our total power need. And they are selling at about 43% below market, according to them. Well, the proof will be in the pudding, but that will create an anomaly in the actuals versus budget once that kicks in. But
Okay, but an anomaly that we would all enjoy.
we would enjoy and be happy about, but nonetheless, just prepping the board that we can't anticipate what WAPA is going to charge, a year from now. So we're doing the best with the information we have.
Okay, and you said that's January 1st?
We have to
That's soon.
decide if we're going to back out by June 30th of this year, or no, this year, yeah. And then January 1st of, okay.
Okay, and so the WAPA power, does it come with a different characteristic in terms of renewables?
Possibly.
It does. It's optional. It's mostly large hydro that
Oh, all right,
choose to get the
got it.
tax for.
Okay, good. Why don't we move on next to propane?
I'm sorry, just.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Chris, sorry.
So electrical, the budget revenue here is for, let's see, I see the 5.2, of course, I see the 5.4. It comes down, how does it come down from 6.7 on the top line down to 5.4 for total revenues? That's all interfund payments out of electrical to other utilities, is that correct?
The top line is kilowatt hour sales.
Oh, sorry, that's units. Sorry. So we're
The fact that there's no dollar signs on the dollars makes the units not totally readily apparent.
Yeah, I should have known that.
I know that because I did that earlier today. So you're the Bob. Yeah.
Where do we see the contribution to, or the contribution to the electrical fund, the electrical reserves? That would be the surplus of the 1.89?
You don't see it on the budget.
Okay. All right, this is operating budget only. Thank you. Then I'll hold the question in reserve, just pun intended, just to understand what we think will happen with reserve growth and reserve interfund reserve transfers. We can go to propane.
Right. I mean, if there's an opportunity to pay down the debt, it would be used for that. I don't remember that we have one this next fiscal year. We don't.
There's 3 coming, if you remember, for the budget
Right.
assumptions that are quite large. I think we recommended
$2 million.
paying one of them, but
Yeah.
not two others.
Right.
We recommend paying one and then deferring 2.
Yeah.
Um,
So we would pay down, we would use some of it for debt payment, principal payment on debt, and the rest would accumulate in the reserve for another opportunity to pay down the debt.
and we have to maintain certain amounts of electric reserve per our covenants with the USDA.
Does that cover your question?
Yeah, I key in on the number 1.1 or $1.0 million of what looks like excess revenue or contribution to reserve. Of
That's
'cause
right.
there's no well, there is depreciation here, so some of that's non-cash. Okay, well,
Yeah, and we've used it to pay down the debt periodically.
thank you.
Okay, let's move on to propane then.
So this more goes to capital, but there was definitely some deferral of propane timing just based on funds available. But we should be doing a rate study for propane soon. So that's on our schedule to get that done. So we may be changing this whole structure altogether during this upcoming fiscal year. So this is just utilizing the same formulaic principles, although I think it's going to be subject to fairly substantive change, especially Doug's change, which I think is an important one to do, changing that whole formula to the prior month application of differences. So I've left this as the traditional formulaic thing we've had for a decade, but bear in mind it is subject to change.
Right, and the other thing I would add on is anticipating the significant capital expenses.
Correct.
We'd probably want to change the base rate to accommodate that,
Correct.
but there's no reason to
Right.
work on that currently.
There's
Yeah.
not, because that's what we'll consider as we go into developing that. But one thing I will say is it's my belief based on the current numbers that we can cash flow the lateral replacements, but we will need to finance the roofs.
Yeah,
So
that seems
and
reasonable.
I've deferred the lateral replacements 3 years out, with the roof being the more critical of the two, because it's a life and safety issue.
Right. Questions on propane?
Yeah, as we go through the next couple iterations, even without a rate change, I would expect net summary would be would not drain to negative numbers over the next 5 years. I mean, we have a surcharge on propane to cover cost of goods sold. So it seems like we should be able to protect something in the range of, 150,000 or something a year. Do you think that'll come out in the later drafts?
I think I mean, I can fudge the numbers however we want, but not accurately. The rate study is what's really going to tell us. And that's so, I mean, I think it's accurate for next year, which is what we're really looking at. Looking in the crystal ball 5 years out, I think the rate study will correct those negatives. But if you want me to put some arbitrary numbers in there, I'd be happy to do so.
No, I'm not looking for any arbitrary numbers. I just, given the structure of the current rate structure, it seems like it's durable. That it shouldn't require a rate study change to cover the cost of propane, because we do have a surcharge on the cost of goods sold, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is the fact that there's rising fixed costs. And there isn't enough in the usage rate to cover those over time, and the base rate's incredibly low. It's what we inherited without any evaluation from Mountain Utilities. So I think in the absence of a rate study, which obviously it would happen, we'd probably end up having the additional fixed costs with a small change in the base rate or something.
Right.
But there's no reason might as well do the full thing.
Yeah.
That's my sense, John.
Okay, and the rate study is,
It's
what?
so the timing is the master plan is underway now. We're meeting with them and last weekend in May or first weekend in June. I think first week in June. Once the master plan's done, we'll have our capital outlay estimates for going forward. Then we can actually build a rate study because we'll know what our fixed and future capital costs are going to be, which all go into the base rate. The commodity rate's the easier part of the two, as you said. We have the adjustment monthly.
Right.
It's figuring out what the fixed assets and the future capital assets are going to do to the base rate.
Okay.
But I mean, I could take a swag at upping the base rate and because I'm, maybe adjusting I mean, I can try and do something. It's just going to be, it's not going to be accurate based on what a rate study is going to come up with, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just always alarming to look at any 5-year plan that just drains into the red, right? And
Right.
the rate studies should be durable, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, for good 5 years. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay,
I'll-
any
I'll
other
just-
questions?
I'll just pick on one light item, and again, it is interfund sales under revenue for propane. In electrical, we call it interfund revenue, but this number is obviously relatively small, so forgive me, but what is interfund revenue on some of these utilities?
That's just sales to our other funds within the district.
So it's when the propane utility uses
Propane used
electrical?
in the firehouse or
I
propane
see.
used in the
It's
maintenance
that
shop.
simple. Okay.
That's simple. Yep. you
Okay,
got
good.
it.
It attracts my attention just because the word interfund, and I think of interfund transfers, but this is simply turning on the lights in the water department, for example. I got it. Thank you.
Okay, speaking of water, water fund is next.
So our water rates do expire this upcoming fiscal year, which is why we'll be doing a new rate study. So this was just applying a CPI, but it's again pure guess how it's going to go. This one also runs into the red as well, but water master plan is also underway. We're going to have a much better handle on that when we go to do the rate study of what those capital costs are going to be. So I can definitely, I mean, again, we righted the ship on this one a little bit more with base rates being truly base rates and water rates being truly water rates in terms of what goes into them. But yes, what this is saying is that we are going to need a rate increase in water with the next rate study.
Yeah, and the depreciation amort in this is formulated as well. Because so that's going to go up faster than this rate because of our refurbishment.
No, that's wastewater, John. This is water.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
But you're right on wastewater. That answer is true for wastewater. Absolutely.
No.
What's the major capital improvements that would make it go up for water?
We have a few studies that we were being forced to do by the state, unfunded mandates. So it's a cross connection control program. It is the lead service line inventory, and it is the hazard assessment.
Right.
Those are the big boys.
Okay.
And because those will ultimately lead to capital improvements, we can depreciate the engineering studies.
All right.
Those are the big
So-
ones. I mean, honestly, it's just engineering.
Right. But that's the big reason why this happens is we have a new state mandate.
Three.
New state mandates.
Yes,
If it
that's
is
correct.
Okay.
Unfunded state mandates. My favorite kind.
Yeah. Any other questions on water? Okay, then wastewater is next.
For wastewater, as John pointed out, we have a big increase in depreciation amortization. That is the wastewater treatment plant, $7 million project being depreciated. So that's the jump in 26 that you see there. And then it jumps again in 27. Anticipating taking substantial completion of portions of the project, which would then be depreciated as we use them. We have to take some substantial completion ownership of those items. We don't just take it all at the end. So that's why you're seeing some of that come in.
Is that like a 35-year lifetime?
I think I'd appreciated the wastewater treatment plant either 30 or 35, Bob. There's a set mandate we have to follow from USDA, and that I'm sure that's one of the listed things.
Okay. Questions on wastewater? Okay. Then employee housing.
Nothing spectacularly interesting here. This always runs at a negative and is trued up at the end with property taxes.
Okay, then the cable fund.
Cable fund is worth a discussion. We have a lot of G&A allocated against cable, and more so after the snow removal change adopted in September by the board. Basically, our G&A is almost double the revenue we receive from Volcano Telephone. It may be a worthy discussion for the board to consider whether we want to continue providing or being in charge of the cable services, as it is a consistent money loser, or if we want to adjust the G&A allocations to be a bit more realistic, as we don't do a whole lot with the cable TV except for upload our board meetings.
Okay, so we'll defer that when I think we have a complete picture of G&A after we have snow removal. I think would be a good time to look at it, but just explanation for those who don't know. Volcano pays us a fee in order to operate in our territory, and that's what we receive. And any expenses we have are somewhat our discretion to do, and whether it's still worthwhile putting things on cable is a.
I mean, the expense of putting the meetings on the actual cable?
Yeah, it's not a big expense, but they're all on the internet. I don't know if anyone watches it on, I don't remember the cable channel. 19?
I have Volcano Cable, and I don't even know what channel it's on. I use streaming services.
So anyway, we can look at possibly moving that G&A allocation because it's probably overstated.
Or we could just get out of the business altogether. It's not a big impact to the budget. So
Oh, we can do that?
I believe so.
But then we would lose the revenue.
Of course, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Or could we ask Volcano for a rate increase?
I think it's a formulaic thing from the FCC.
Okay. Just a thought.
Yeah. Okay. Solid waste?
Solid waste is in good shape. We had to increase some rates there. There was some reserves available in solid waste. So even if we anticipate increased cost of sales at an estimated CPI, our current rate structure looks to be sufficient to hold us for the next 5 years, barring something unforeseen. We haven't had to replace dumpsters in years. We got the new forks, which is going to increase their longevity. ACES has been donating more to us, e.g. the green waste bins, which this year are going to be paid by Amador County, but things like that have offset our cost donations and some other grants. So at this point, I don't see a real need to increase rates.
Good. Okay, any questions on solid waste? Okay, if not, then the next step in the budget is to do more refinements and have it be reviewed by the finance committee and integrate in snow removal.
The big thing is getting this, because we have to create 2 operating budgets in order to do the snow removal. We have to create one with the old G&A allocations and one with the new G&A allocations. So that's a complete rerun of the operational budget. And then that changes the price of snow removal depending on what the G&A allocation is. So it's not apples to apples anymore. You can't say, well, it was 710,000 without KMA, it should be 710 with them. No, the G&A changes completely when we do that swap around. So we'll be working on that, trying to get basically 2 sets of books, one with, one without, to look at that. And then that'll bleed back through to the snow removal budget. I will only bleed it into the snow removal budget by itself, because it would affect every single one of these tabs, and there's no point until we make a decision which way we're going to go, how to do that. So
Okay. And we'd expect to have most of that understood by the June board meeting.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Yes, I'll have it by finance. I should have it by
Okay,
finance on the
even better.
21st, I believe.
Okay,
So we should have that. So it may behoove us to consider a special meeting before the June meeting, just to say yes or no. The board will have to make a decision. So maybe finance will make a recommendation with regards to that, and we can consider possibly doing something else.
yeah. Okay, good. Thank you for that operation, and we're ready to move on to performance reporting. 9C.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So for performance reporting, if we start with electric, things of note in April for electric is you do see a little bit of production at the powerhouse. We did a maintenance run of the generators in the evening. We didn't experience any problems. It was a good shakeout run for us. And then you'll also notice that our unidentified system losses show a -1% for the month of April. We believe this is due to the backside line meters being estimated for the month. We weren't able to get back there because it closed right before we could get back there. So I expect to see that turn around in May or possibly June, whenever the road dries out enough to get back there. Overall, year to date for electric, we're sitting at about 9%, which is good for us. That might increase slightly with the backside actual reads. And then if we take a look down at propane, we do see a positive loss for the month of April. We budgeted 1.9 million cubic feet, and we actually metered a little bit more than that. We see a 15% loss for April, year to date, 3%. And moving on over into water. For the month of April, we again produced metered more than our budget because the resort was open. We metered a little over 1 million gallons of water. We saw a 13% loss for the month, 13% year to date. And then lastly, wastewater. As you can see in wastewater, we're in I&I season. So you can tell that by the percentage of unidentified unmetered usage at 60%. So I&I is just extra water getting into our system through snow melt, mostly at this time of year. So we do see a 60% in April. We expect to see that continue until we get a little less snow on the ground. So probably another month or two of I&I. 30% unidentified usage for year to date.
So do you feel like we've got a budget to go do the manhole repairs and such that
We
will be required?
We do. We have budgeted staff time to rehab 4 manholes this year with some additional rings and lid repair because of the snow removal damage that we saw. So we'll see those improvements happen. We're also in the process of getting bid documents together for the wintergreen sewer line replacement, which may also help us see those numbers come down. So we continue to try to put money at this every year and make some improvements there.
And the wastewater master plan is also part of their job is going to smoke test all the lines and video all the lines. So we're going to know truly where every offset joint crack, spiral crack, etc. is.
Brandy, I guess I'm trying to get my head around like the orders of magnitude of like the ROI on like the cost of having that water go through the plant versus the cost of, say, a manhole. Like, what is the general ROI of like, an investment that we're making in this versus the cost of actually getting that water?
I mean, when we did the manhole project, the first year we did it, we hit 5 manholes, I think, that year. One manhole alone, we reduced a 50 gallon per minute leak. down to about 0.5 gallons a minute. So that was a substantive impact for relatively little cost.
So my follow-up question is like, should we be putting more at this to do it faster? And is there a, I mean, obviously there's a ability to do it and things like that of you can't do them all at the same time. Like, are we doing, if there is a good ROI on
We're
this, are we
hitting the
doing
lowest hanging fruit with the best ROI that we can do in-house at this point.
as fast as we can? Is my question, isn't it?
No, not as fast as we can. Last year, we didn't do a single manhole.
We did not.
We had too many summer projects that came up and other priorities that were set by the board. So no. This year, we anticipate getting 4, which is what we budgeted for.
And that, the regular graphs are in the packet along with the aquifer level sheets. But that's all I have unless there are any questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, customer communications policies, 9D.
So communications committee and staff have been working on creating some communications policies, trying to keep it as simple as possible. The committee had a preference for simple spreadsheets for each of them. So this is the who we communicate with, what we communicate, and how we communicate with our customers. And then the whys are in the first column or first row. So we're happy to entertain any questions. Hopefully everybody read them thoroughly.
I really like the format. I think everybody did a great job on it.
Sure. Yeah.
It's all done.
No, we had a great committee conversation.
And anytime you can do text at 45-degree angle, I'm proud. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, it's
Because I can't.
No, and I think just as a follow-up, I mentioned these in the reports for a few months, and we said that we would bring all of these together at one time in one packet, and that's why you're seeing all of these come together in one agenda item today instead of coming through piecemeal. I think I would add.
Are there any comments on these? If not, we want a motion to
Move to.
I agree. It's really clear and concise. So, motion to approve.
I'll second then.
Okay.
All right, Epstein,
Aye.
Mitterrand,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Tucker.
You're muted, Chris.
Go to the top, say it louder. Norbert, it's unanimous.
Okay. Yeah, again, it's a really great job.
Do we want to post these on the website?
I would think so. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get that done.
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is that we are working on, and we'll get to this later, but FAQs that we're working on will link to these as well. So I think that's perfectly appropriate to have them.
Yeah, and we may want to look at like the.
But we can talk about it at COM, but I just want to make sure that I don't go putting stuff on there or doesn't have consensus we should do. So
my other thought is we might want to look at the emergency notice manager and where there's titles in the emails, make sure they match these titles.
Maybe we can do that next report server meeting.
Yeah, I think that'd be useful too.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
It would eliminate a lot of confusion.
Right.
So perfect. All right, low income housing. The low income program, I mean. So just as background, we've been dealing with this for quite a while, but we're required to set aside a portion of our electric rates for public benefit charge. And one of the things we can do with that is a low income program for electric rates. We're under no obligation to do a low income program, but we are required to analyze it. And that was the needs assessment we did last year, if the board remembers. In short, we received 13 surveys to the 186 that we sent out, and only 2 indicated they were qualified for other low-income programs. We looked at all the other public utility entities in the state. Of those, 5 of the 26 did not offer a low-income program, instead generally deferring to state or federal programs like LIHEWA and LIHEWAP, which are electric and water, so respectively. For the remaining 21, they basically did one of 3 things. They either did a % reduction on usage rates, they did a flat amount on usage rates, or they did a flat amount only for winter months. And that was generally limited to higher elevation, colder, snowy climate utilities. Mount Lassen MUD, for example, is one of them. Trinity PUD is another one that does it. and a couple others at the higher elevation, Mount Shasta, Shasta Mountain, blah, blah, blah. So in short, the average percent reduction was 25.6 across all the utilities. The flat was $21 across all the utilities, and then the partial year discount was 50% or $57 a month. And we used, so one thing that planning asked that we look back at was, well, what's the average usage for the full-time homeowners, the 186 people we identified initially. And so their usage is a bit higher than the average customer. So we were able to do that. Thank you, Bob, for helping me get that report going. And so we looked at that just to determine what the total fiscal impact was. Before I get to the fiscal impact, one thing that just came across my desk is something called LIRA, Low Income Relief Act, that is currently working its way through the legislation, or it might be just looking for sponsors right now. But it is drafted, and Aqua's taking part in CSDA, and then it's a low income consortium of various people building this legislation. And one of the things that they did, in addition to accepting CalFresh, CalWorks as automatically qualifying people for low income housing, they looked at, like I said, LIHEAP and LIWOP, which are basically federally set programs, but they provide funding down to the state, and the state provides to the counties. And then that's how you get water or electric utility relief from the county or the state. So for consistency, staff is recommending that we use the LIHEAP and LIWOP, and probably, which is going to be LIRA as well, criteria for what justifies or what constitutes low income housing or low income customers. And you can see the table here. It changes from year to year. So this is just this year's table. So I would just recommend that we adopt the same criteria as LIHEAP and LIWOP as our low income criteria, or qualification in CalFresh or CalWorks, which are the other two criteria that is universal across the other utilities. In terms of fiscal impact, any questions on that before I skip off of that? On eligibility, does that make sense to everyone? Yeah. Okay. So looking at the fiscal impact, the planning committee recommended $25 a month credit against their incurred electricity usage costs for the customers. This would average about $300 a year, or this would be $300 a year. And that would, based on how the board set aside 5% of the PBC, we could serve up to 6 qualified low income. Currently, we have 2, gives us room to grow, or if someone didn't identify themselves in the study, we would have some room to do that. Obviously, the board can revisit this, the amount, anything, if they wanted to adopt this program. And with that, it's, I think 2 questions. Does the board want to adopt a low income program? And if so, do they want to adopt it as suggested by planning? So those are probably the 2 questions.
Okay, so we defer to Chris, seeing, give us feedback from planning.
This has the feedback from planning.
Okay, so it's recommended by the planning committee.
All right.
That's correct. This is consistent with what we discussed at the last planning meeting, I think, right, Eric?
Yes.
Good. There was a small twist provided by Eric Rickert, and there was consensus to support that, and that's what's in here, I believe.
Yeah, the 25.
Good. Yes.
Okay, comments?
Question. The $25 a month would be, you said, on usage costs. So that is only being applied to the per kilowatt hour.
Correct.
Dollars. So if someone were to not be in town for a month, I know you showed the averages, which would be more than $25, I think, if I did the math. But that's an average, right? So if someone were out of town for a month or something like that, and they used de minimis kilowatt hours, would we give them a negative amount of credit back? Would that be, if they used $5?
We would credit up to their usage, or 25, whichever was greater.
Okay.
So it would never be a negative.
Well, I don't think that's how I read this. It says $25 per month. So
yeah, they won't make money by not using power, I guess is.
Well, but I mean,
yeah,
it says this would be $300 a year. Well, it would be up to $300.
Up to $300.
I just want to be clear on that aspect of it. I guess the other part of it would be, I'm not sure if the comment of, Chris, you can maybe comment on this, but if it's saying that I certainly understand $8 per kilowatt hour decrease could, have a conservation impact, but and 25, just saying you're taking $25 off of usage is, I don't know that that's that much different, I guess. And I'm just trying to wonder if I've built on that, is it, why does it have to be on usage instead of like a base rate, which would always be more than $25?
That's how every other utility applies it, is on usage. So we copied it, the programs within the state. I'm sure they did it for some reason that's above my pay grade.
It assumes 100 kilowatts is the minimum, right?
Right. I mean, that's kind of what
And the
my
average
point
is 300 something.
Yeah, the average is, I mean, the average across the board is 200, and then the average for full times is 337 per month.
Okay.
So 63 cents. It's
Okay. Well, anyway, I would just make it really clear in the way that this recommendation is written. It was not clear to me that it is up to $25 based on your usage. And then I would also make sure that that is very clear in the program guidelines as they're described to the customers, so they're not confused by that portion of it.
yes, we could do that.
Okay, any other questions from the board? Audience question? And can't tell if somebody's on Zoom and asking.
The hand would show up, but no.
Okay. You're monitoring that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, no question for me.
Okay, is there a motion? Well, two motions, right? Is that, you wanted us
It's
to
all
motion?
rolled into one, I think.
Okay,
If-
so,
Does the board want to do it? And if so, how do we want to adopt it?
I mean, I'll motion that with the clarifications of up to $25, and the clarity on that, and I'll motion with that, slight adjustment of what's written, that we move forward with this and adopt it and implement it as that with that
I
adjustment.
second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Epstein,
Aye.
Nataranda,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Duker,
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous.
Okay, good. Move on to the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department new logo, which I don't want to prejudice the board, but I think is rather cool.
Oh, well, then I do too. I wasn't sure, but
I have to create the program.
Oh.
Just as soon as I build it. And just to be clear on the last one, 90 staff will now build the forms, get it up on the website, advertise it in the newsletter, etc. And then it'll be available. We'll target July 1st, but we're trying to get the energy efficiency program published by July 1st. So we'll get that one first, and if we have time, we'll get the low income done as well.
Okay.
KVFD new logo. So in the board packet is the staff report, actually was in communications as well. But essentially in 1998, the fire department members created their own logo. And over the years, the company that used to provide that logo, the graphics and so forth, has gone out of business. In 2022, there was a slight modification to the original design, as you can see here in the center.
Looks like they switched to a nighttime scene.
Yeah, well, that was the way I cut and paste, but but you notice EMS was removed and Station 93 was added at the very bottom. And then with the addition of the new fire truck, thanks to the community and the 501c3, it's time for new graphics for that vehicle. And the thought was, since we've got to basically hire somebody to do the artwork and reproduce this graphic, it'd be a great time to maybe change the logo. So the volunteers put something together, came to me after several versions. And what you see here is the proposed new logo. And note that gray area, that silhouette that's around that new logo is not the new logo. It would be just like the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
So no gray. And in thorough conversation with the communications committee, they recommended that we use a different font. We use the Sans Serif font.
Sans serif.
Whatever that is. We're going to use that.
Without the dingles.
No
Without the
dissenters.
which would be more clear and easier to reproduce, especially for embroidery work. That was the problem we've been having, is how do you embroidery and or get the details of the skier and snowboarder correct. And then also there was a comment to center the fonts a little bit better. Again, this was a, I don't know, second or third version of the draft, but there's a cleaner draft that's out there. But essentially make those changes and move toward the new logo. And I guess the final note is the overall cost to basically replace the 6 decals that we have on the trucks now is about $250, if that. So it's really minimal cost in that way. And then we're not gonna go out and buy new t-shirts and new patches and have stuff done. As things need to be replaced, we'll certainly go into this new look. And then letterhead, we don't have reams and reams of letterhead stock on hand. So again, it's really a minimal cost to make this change.
Yeah, I think it looks great.
I'll motion to approve it.
Okay, I'll second.
All right, Epstein,
Aye.
Nataranda,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Duker,
I,
aye, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, so next item 9G is the first draft of general manager goals for the next fiscal year. So the personnel committee did this as a starting point to encourage conversation. The ratios are the same as what we've done in the past. And then we took things that are already completed, obviously, and removed them, and then made a few other suggestions. Probably one of the ones is to focus on the 2 issues on propane, which is to get an assessment of which buildings are capable or interested in fuel switching and which ones could do demand reductions during periods of low period. For example, the Mountain Club is mostly rentals, and people, I'm sure, like to have their warmth at 75. So they might put in something that would override it when we're short to do things. That would be an example of a demand reduction that could be enforced. So we added that, and then obviously the fire department long-term strategy is in there. The others are mostly the same as last year. So open for suggestions in this. Doesn't have to be finalized today. I just wanted to get the conversation started. Okay, and so look at this, and if you have any that you want to include or modify, then send it to me. And the next personnel committee will work with the general manager and finalize this in time for the next board meeting or the budget. Probably want to do them concurrently. Yeah. Okay. Major project updates.
Everything has been updated in the capital projects list. And until that's final adopted, that's a better gauge than the major projects update. So I would refer to the capital projects list for now until we set it in stone, and then I'll update the major projects list.
Okay. So general manager's report.
Mostly it's been doing capital and operational budget. I mean, that's been my life for a bit here. Brandy and Tommy did go to a WAPA meeting for new allottees and received some very convoluted information. And so we had a meeting with Shell to confirm that they could still schedule for us with WAPA. They are already doing it for the Port of Stockton, and they're confident that they can do it, and they don't believe it will be any change to our contract. And they can incorporate it within the existing contract and budget. So that is done as we get towards 2025. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
Okay. The only thing I would add to the general manager's report is that twice a year, the public utility and municipal utility districts get together for discussion. And so that's being sponsored at SMUD Monday and Tuesday next week. And so I think
I'll report on that in June.
Eric's going to attend. It's a good opportunity for us to find out who's doing what, anyone who likes to do rate studies. And also, so I see that as an opportunity. I'm going to attend the morning on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll be there Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah. So I think that'll be really useful. Okay. Operations report.
briefly for operations, as you can imagine, we are winding up winter, removing snow stakes from snow removal, for example. Slowly getting ready for CPC inspection as things melt out. Transformers need to be inspected, cleaned off, making sure that there's a proper identification. This CPUC inspection's coming up on May 20th.
Is that the 5-year annual one?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. And they want to focus or take a look on the Out Valley side. So we've had staff go down to Cam Green once, the long way around to get to it. And then next week they're going to have two trips down to Cam Green just to make sure there isn't weeds in the substation and other issues that might be associated with, winter. So the 20th is a busy day because not only are we doing that, we're also installing the membranes at the wastewater treatment plant. They've been shipped from back east. They're sitting in our vehicle maintenance shop now, and along with the header assemblies. And they'll be the Corvallis, is that right? Corvallis is the new company that replaced the or changed names, but essentially they'll have staff on site to assist and or basically transition into the new membranes. So it'll be a really busy week. For water, the irrigation meters aren't quite ready to be turned on just yet. As you can imagine, we still have a lot of snow out there, but typically that'll go on in June. But we've already been, CJ in the office is already receiving calls. Hey, can you turn my irrigation on? So expect that in June. We'll probably follow up with the newsletter just announcing when we turn them on. And as you know, we turn the irrigation meters on for just 4 months and then turn them off in the fall to keep them from freezing. And customers, as you know, board approved was we charge you the base rate for just those 4 months that they're on 1/3 of the year. For fire, we're season to date. We're 45 calls this year. All the calls for the month of April were EMS related, either vehicle accidents. We actually, I guess you can call this an EMS related call. We were called for CPR in progress at the towers. Ended up being a dog who was left in a car, unfortunately. And so as soon as we got on scene, we canceled it. It's just a sad thing to see. And then I was able to attend the Amador Fire Chiefs meeting last week, as well as the Cal Fire Cooperators meeting to talk about wildland fires and what to expect for this year. And right now, because of the late rains in March and April, things are looking pretty good. We're actually considered to be a normal year, but the tipping point they're predicting is around mid-July. Then we'll start seeing the grasses dry out further below. And as the season goes later, it may impact us. But so far, everybody's getting staffed up. Cal Fire's ready to go with their crews. And we're internally for the fire department working with our firefighters to ensure that they have the necessary wildland courses that they can take online, S-130, 190, for example. And then we'll coordinate with Eastern Alpine County. In fact, I have a meeting with them as well as the Cal Fire Chief, Battalion Chief, next Monday to kind of talk about wildland cross-training, what we can do to help each other, and what resources that we might be able to provide. And then finally for fire, the Cal Fire's fire hazard sensitivity zone map just came out. And we went from a low to a moderate risk here in Kirkwood. What that does, it triggers one, if you sell property in Kirkwood, you'll need to get a defensible space inspection for the sale. And two, it obviously increases the fire risk for Kirkwood. But it also, if we're a higher fire risk, we're probably going to be eligible for better grants or more grant funding to defensible space work. And as Eric mentioned before, the Amador Fire Council is going to donate funds for the greenways containers. We're hoping for Alpine County to continue with their program with the title funds there for defensible space and shipping. And I think they just announced, the Firewise Council announced their shipping summer dates will be in August 12th through the 16th, and then we'll follow up in the fall with some shipping dates as well. And we'll put this in the newsletter for the community to know. But the first round of shipping here in the community will be on August 12th through the 16th. Again, through the Firewise program, which has been really successful for Kirkwood. And that concludes my operations
So I
report.
do have one question on the changing category.
Mhm.
That does obligate vacant lots to maintain
In Alpine
In
County.
Alpine County.
in Alpine County.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that triggers that as well.
And
So,
Alpine has enforcement authority there because of that.
okay. So I mean,
Can you finish your sentence? It enforces what?
that if you have an unimproved property, you're required to keep it defensible space clean. There's some proper word for it, but you can't just leave it. You have to maintain a certain level of cleanliness.
Yeah, I don't have my notes on that,
Yeah.
but yeah, essentially.
But
that-
it's
that
only
is for
Alpine County.
Yeah. So I have.
Okay. Any questions? Operations report? Okay, then let's go on the standing committees. Start with finance. John?
No further update on finance. We're probably the biggest impact has been changing the dates. And finance just isn't getting the materials in time to review before the board, and there's a lot of talent there, and the members prepare really carefully and have added a lot of value historically. So, Eric communicated with the committee yesterday, and when we get the dates straightened out, we'll get that back on track, because it's we've got people with institutional knowledge, we've got people with backgrounds as chief financial officers, and so we want to take advantage of that, and they've added value in the past. So we'll get that back on track.
Yeah, I agree. It's unfortunate that that's all happened, but starting next month or starting going forward now, we'll be okay. I see Jack's on the call, so I just want to tell him that we appreciate the time he's put in. Okay, operations.
I don't have anything to add. We covered it all pretty much.
Okay, Chris, planning?
Planning has the primary agenda item of the large customer fuel switching discussions. We don't have any significant update from our last meeting, but in our next meeting, I think next week, we will hear an analysis of the customers who have responded, what data they've provided to a questionnaire that Eric and staff sent them. In general, the participation of our top 10 or 12 largest propane customers has been positive, with one, maybe two exceptions. All have said yes, they want to play. In other words, they'll provide information, enter into discussion. The point, of course, is for us to talk to them about their current boilers and infrastructure and use of propane, what the life expectancy of those that equipment is, whether we could help them with engineering studies and feasibility studies on making the switch from propane to electric. So it looks like most of our large customers want to participate, and we'll know more after discussing in detail at the next meeting. Planning also put the finishing touch on that low income program that we discussed 20 minutes ago.
Okay, thank you. Communications?
We met yesterday. In addition to what's in the board packet there, I'll have a more full written report for the next board meeting, since we met yesterday, which again, impacted by the scheduling stuff. So that'll get on track better next time. And then it was just, the only thing I will say is that we'll continue to work on the FAQs. And we now have drafts of all of them in flight that we are talking about for all of our different services that we offer. And you can see the roadmap that is included in the packet here to see what else is on our backlog and topics that will be coming up in the future.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Personnel met twice in the last since the last board meeting. Three things. One is remote work protocols. So currently the GM has discretion to decide who's allowed to remote work, under what conditions. So we agreed on a set of guidelines for the GM to follow, and the guidelines are it's available for administrative staff unless there's a conflict with a need for them to be here. And the clerk of the board sometimes has that category as well, because they also serve as answering the phones. The eligibility is up to 2 days a week, your choice between Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And again, these are guidelines that the GM will use for approving that. We do have an open position currently that could benefit from this, so we think it will help increase the pool that we have for hiring. Secondly, are commercial endorsements. There was a request from Five Star Bank, who I safely say we're quite fond of the service they provide. They asked whether we would agree to and provide some form of endorsement. So the rules are going to be that there can't be any compensation to the district or the employees. The GM needs to approve it, and then the board needs to validate that it's an appropriate use of our name. So we did that. And then lastly, a lot of changes to the employee handbook, most of them small fine print, but the categories were identifying that on-call housing that will provide on-call housing alternatives as a method of securing the houses. We put in the telecommunications policy we just talked about. We're also offering a step increase for people that complete a certification above their job level to encourage people to be prepared for advancement. And then there's two additional, one old and one relatively new bills from the legislature that require specific compliance for how we deal with sick leave and vacation, things of that sort. And then there's a section there for people who request a special accommodation for medical to clarify how that should operate. So there's rules of that should happen. And then we also, this may sound, there's a section on nepotism. And so, I mean, it's a small community. There are relationships that already exist. So we feel that that's a general manager discretion that didn't need an elaborate definition. So we revised that. So those are all the changes. The personnel committee approved it. And those are all the changes from personnel.
The only thing I would say, Bob, is the step increases and the dollar amounts associated were approved by the board. I just had to put them in the employee handbook, and personnel just verified that it was consistent with the board direction.
Thank you for that correction. Yeah, right, you are. Okay, so there are no updates from temporary advisory committees. So we'll next go into general board discussion. Is there anything a board member wants to bring up, clarifying questions or other suggestions?
Bob, could I ask just at high level, what are the big agenda items for next month's meeting? Go ahead.
Next month's is really is getting caught up on the financials, because we're behind for a while, and we're counting on the finance committee to help us there. And then getting the detailed budget, particularly snow removal. And also, next meeting has a cutoff time to accommodate a couple of people who can't have a hard deadline. So we're not trying to add too much more to it, but if there's something particular you want to discuss, we can figure that out.
No, not necessarily. So will we, for example, go another pass or another round through either the CapEx budget or the ops budget, which we talked about today, of course, but do we come back to it next month?
The ops budget, probably. The capital budget only if there's changes that are driven by the operations budget needing the trim.
Thank you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't know if there'll be an update on our options for fire service or not by then.
Yeah, Rick and I have received 3 RFPs on that, and he's creating the scoring criteria. And we will be reviewing those and bringing a recommendation back to the board.
Okay.
Should they decide to proceed.
So there might be something related to fire that we would want to discuss.
Yeah.
At the next board meeting. Okay. With that, our next item is closed session, and then we'll adjourn after that. And I assume the
Ready to go.
Usual setup is ready.
Got rid of a few coffee.
Okay, this meeting is back in session and in our in our closed session, there were no actionable items to report at this time. So with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Next
You
meeting is
too.
the 7th of June, is that correct?
Correct.
It is on calendars, at least mine still from for the following week, so maybe a calendar check. But I've got it noted.
Okay.
Bye.
It was kind of nice that we were able to